they looked at it as a statement of power. Because whenever a new Caesar was appointed, that is what he would say. Caesar is Lord. Caesar is in control. Caesar is in charge, not you. It was a way of saying, my boot is on your neck. You're not in charge. I am. Whatever you say, whatever I say to you, you will do. It was a term, it was a statement, a phrase of power. And Paul knows, because he's been preaching Jesus is Lord, it flies in the face. It is completely counter to what the Roman Empire wants their citizens to live under. He's in jail because of saying Jesus is Lord. And he's been writing this and talking to the people in Philippi and throughout much of the Roman known world. Many of the letters that Paul writes have this idea, even if it's not a specific phrase, that he is saying Jesus is Lord. And he knows that there is a band, specifically in Philippi, there's this little band of people who are following Christ. I've been preaching this Jesus is Lord thing. I've been writing to them. I've been teaching them and encouraging them. Pretty soon, and they're going to start buying it. And they're going to start really living out this thing and relaying in a way that they begin to say out loud to the Roman government, Jesus is Lord, not Caesar. And so Paul is saying to them, you are going to end up in jail because of this thing that you're preaching. This thing that you are living out, this Jesus is Lord. So, when it happens, when the Roman government beats down your door and they arrest you and they take your stuff and they jail your family and bad stuff starts happening, let your gentleness, let your forbearance be evident to all. Because it's about to come down on you hard. Are you going to turn the other cheek, in the words that Jesus uses? Are you going to let your gentleness be the thing that guides your life? Because, and this is something that we all struggle with, don't we? Because when something is wrong out there, there is something that rises up in us. And for some of us, it's a little bit of a bigger thing that rises up. And for some of us, it's just a little bit of an urging, a nudging inside of us that says, go and fix that. Go and make it right. And especially if it's standing at your door, what would you do to defend your family? Paul says, let your gentleness be evident to all, including the Roman government that's going to come and punish you. Let your forbearance be evident. And this is a hard thing for us to do. How about the people that you and I live next to and we work next to? Is your forbearance, is your gentleness evident to all the people that you deal with? Those that you work next to, that you neighbor beside, those in your family. Is your gentleness, is your forbearance evident to those people? Because it's really easy to write this off and say, well, Paul's talking about the big thing of the government. Okay, I'm not going to resist the government if they want to take my taxes, if they want to do this, or they want to do that. I won't resist the government. My family, that's another issue. Is your gentleness evident to the people that you are in closest proximity to? So this is one of those issues of reckless trust. Am I willing to believe that God's justice is perfect and His timing is never too late? Am I willing to believe that fiducia can begin to guide that part of my life? There's another word that is in the back half of that verse, in verse 5. He says, let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Now this is a promise. This is a thought process for every generation of Christ followers that has come before us. Then if you read some of the things of Paul, he is talking about how the Lord his return is imminent. It's right around the corner. There is this sense of promise that God is coming back. Jesus will be returning soon. And it's not an empty promise. It's not something that is a fairy tale. Are we faithful to the God who has been faithful to us? Because you look at the promises that God has made, and you look at the things that He has done. He has never left us alone. He has been beside us the entire time. Are you willing to live with that promise that the Lord is near? If He's not coming back today, He is very close. Are you willing to live that way? Verse 6 says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. I don't like this one very much, and I don't think that you will either, because this deals with issues of worry. And Paul says, do not be anxious about anything. Who's going to worry about my stuff? Nobody. It's not your job. As I was preparing for this morning, I read a commentary. Now I'm going to read this to you. This is a little bit harsh, but I think the commentary has it right. Kind of buckle up for this. When he says, do not be anxious, the commentary says this: self-centered, counterproductive worry, not legitimate cares and concerns for the spread of the gospel. Whew, ouch. Self-centered, counterproductive worry. If we're not allowed to worry about our stuff, what am I going to do? Well, according to the commentary, and I think the commentary is exactly right, and the way that Paul continues to write to the early church, he says, don't worry about that stuff. That stuff is taken care of. You need to be about one thing. Are you involved in bringing more people into a relationship with Jesus or not? It is a simple question. And the problem with many of us is because we are consumed with worry and thoughts and fret about tomorrow, right or wrong. If we're not concerned about people coming to know Jesus Christ, Paul pretty much says, you're not doing your job. How about the counter reaction to worry? Is verse 6. It's also in verse 6 at the back half of that. It says, with thanksgiving, through prayer and petition. This is a hard one as well. This is one of our words. And this may be our biggest issue as Americans, especially right now in the current economic and all of that climate that is going on and the difficulty that is happening. This is the fiducia, the reckless trust. Are you willing to put down all of the stuff that's in your little pocket of the world? Because we are convinced, our culture says this, that if you don't take care of your stuff, nobody else will. It's not true. God says that you are more important than anything that He has created. Let's get a grasp on this. This is the creator of the universe. Everything from the deepest reaches of space, places that we can't even see yet, God made all of that. Down to the finite things that exist in our world, all of the beauty that we're about to experience as spring comes on. All of the little microorganisms that exist in our bodies that make us who we are and allow us to function the way that we do. God made all of that, and God says, you are more important than everything else I've created. So are you going to trust me with the stuff that is in your little corner of the world that you think you control or not? Are you going to do it? Are you going to trust Him? Or are we going to reserve that for ourselves? Now, let's be honest and let's be fair. I don't think that there's anybody here that's knocking this out of the park every time up. It's not possible because we are wired in such a way that we are concerned about self. There's self-preservation that's just kind of wired into us. And God says, I want you to little by little begin to give some of that up. Are you willing to exemplify reckless trust in God? Verse 7, 8, and 9, this is where we'll kind of wrap up and conclude. Paul writes, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right and pure, lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. This is the word assensus. Now, Paul doesn't say think about such things in ways that it's mindless, mind-numbing, be holy, be good, think about God, think about God, think about God. I don't think that's what Paul's talking about. The reason I don't think that is because of what he says in verse 9. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice. There is a practical part of understanding the way that God operates and taking on His principles and His ideas and saying, this is what God looks like over here. I understand and I grasp what God is about. That's not just that part. There is a practical part that says, you see all this stuff? Drag it out in your life. Make sure that you're doing these things. In a sense, you are becoming a practical Christian, that you are living out the things that you believe, that you say matter in your life. And then he wraps up in verse 9 and says, and the peace of God will be with you. Paul refers to the peace of God in verse 7 there, doesn't he? This peace of God is something that, as in his words, covers everything. It doesn't make sense to the people outside of relationship with God. But there is a peace when we begin to lay down our lives. There is peace when we begin to sacrifice little pieces of our lives. There is a sense of peace that overruns us. That doesn't make sense to the world. And yet, somehow, makes sense as we look at our relationship